So here's a wall of random accessories. There's like D-pads for game consoles, random cables, 8-bit dough or 8-bit do. I'm never sure how to say that brand. A little NES style. Well, it's more like an SNES controller with the L and R triggers, but it's a Bluetooth controller, kind of a cross between an NES and an SNES controller. Very cool. More random accessories, some memory cards, a lot of screen replacement, covers for like the Game Boy, Game Boy Color. There's one there for the Game Gear. So that's pretty cool if you're repairing handheld consoles. Speaking of handheld consoles, some DMGs and some PSPs, Game Boy Advance, SPs, Game Boy Color, original DS in there. A lot of original Game Boy games. You know, I'm big on my Game Boy games right now, so I'm probably leaving with some of those. This wall basically looks the same as the last time I was here. A lot of Intellivision games, ColecoVision, VIC-20. Yeah, this wall is a little bit different. We've got a lot of these Hyperkin accessories, a lot of these like PS2 to HDMI. There's a Saturn to HDMI. There was a Wii, I think, to HDMI. The Atari 2600 controller. There's a TurboGrafx-16 controller there from Hyperkin. I like seeing some of those accessories, actually. If they had a Sega Genesis to HDMI, probably would have picked that up. But it was like the one they were missing. As always, lots of boxed consoles, special editions, some Game & Watch, Nintendo Game & Watches. Oh, man. I was really tempted to buy one of those. I think those are awesome. Streets of Rage 3, Thunder Force 2 and 3, some neat boxed Genesis games there. PSP games, what do we got? One of those Super Nintendo portable things. Some Dreamcast accessories. A lot of TurboGrafx-16 games in there. That is the giant, well, there's a Master System in a box. The giant controller for, I think that's for original Xbox, for some mech game. I don't know what this was. It was like a little Sega Saturn box just to hold stuff in, but it was like the Japanese white variant of the Sega Saturn. Yeah, a lot of CD games. Oddly enough, some Jaguar CD games in there. 3DO games. Tower of Power with the wireless 6-button controller. Yeah. Flashback for the Jag. Boxed version of Flashback for the Jag. Gamecube Games. Lots of Gamecube games. My coworker picked up a few Gamecube games and N64 games. Some cool N64s, including this one that looks like it's RGB modded, or component or RGB. One of the little mini Famicom classics. Oh, I was very tempted to pick that up. I already have the NES one, and it's modded, and I have like a Raspberry Pi 4 thing that looks like a little Genesis that can play all those games. But just as a shelf, an ornament on the shelf, that little Famicom looks amazing. Super Famicom games, lots of Super Nintendo games, some boxed Super Nintendo games. I took a look at Doom boxed. I have that. My box is a repro. It's the real cartridge, but I got a repro box for it. Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. No, not Super Street Fighter, just regular Street Fighter 2 Turbo. Boxed in the for the Famicom. Lots of NES games as always. Tons of NES games. Another one of those 8-bit dough Bluetooth controllers. They also had the one that, I think one of those ones there. Well, not that one. That's the same one in a box. For some reason, the same price as all the others. And then that's the more like a Super Nintendo shaped controller, but still with the NES coloring on it. Lots of PS1 games. I was specifically looking for a game called Overblood, which is a game I had back in the day, and haven't been able to find it lately. It wasn't amazing, kind of a Resident Evil clone, but it was real-time 3D Resident Evil clone before way before Dino Crisis. A fairly early game, I think. Power-based converter to play Master System games on a Genesis. This took was going to say took my eye. It didn't take my eye, but it sort of confused me for a second. I was like, why is this Model 1 Genesis slightly smaller? And then I realized it was that, like, at Games 1 or whatever flashback Genesis thing that came out a few years ago. Atari 400. They still got Vectrex here. All the old consoles. This place was always great for finding those consoles. Lots of vinyl records. I didn't see any Laserdisc movies. They usually have lots of Laserdisc movies. That TurboGrafx 16 kiosk is pretty cool. A boxed Mega Drive 2. I love the Japanese art on the Mega Drive boxes. Commodore 16. Wasn't that like a Japanese exclusive or something? Or I'm probably confusing that with another variant. There's so many weird Commodores. We got some of those like Frog. What was it? Coleco made those. They had like vacuum fluorescent display screens, kind of like segmented LCDs, but they lit up in like vibrant colors. Yeah, Frogger and Pac-Man. Sega Activator. Nobody wants that. Weird game. You know what? I'm surprised I didn't buy this, honestly. I should have bought this. Game Boy Fanny pack thing. That is awesome. As a Game Boy collector, I think that's pretty cool. I'm sort of realizing now why didn't I pick that up. The last story, it's actually a hint as to something that I picked up. Got this boombox wall. This is as soon as you walk in, just a wall of boomboxes. It's actually on both sides, like you can't see it behind me. There's even more boomboxes. Oh, and a Game Boy, was it the 4-player adapter, like the 4-player link cable thing, but actually I just realized now it's a Japanese version of it in a box. That's pretty cool. They had a Super Game Boy, like the Japanese Super Famicom version of a Super Game Boy there too, but it wasn't like the second revision that came out in Japan. Yeah, speaking of Jaguar CD games, there's Blue Lightning, and in the background you might be able to see a few more copies. There's like 3 copies that I saw of Blue Lightning for the Jaguar CD. And then for what I picked up, like I said, the last story for Wii, that was a gift from my wife. She's into RPGs, JRPGs. I picked up 3 Game Boy games for myself. That is Shadowgate Classic, which is one of those combo, works on Game Boy Color. I got Ninja Turtles 3, which is fairly hard to find. Like the first 2 on the Game Boy are the ones that you usually see. That's Fall of the Foot Clan and Return from the Sewers. But this Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3, a little bit harder to find on the Game Boy. So that was the most expensive of the Game Boy games by quite a bit. So yeah, Kirby 2 for Game Boy, that was like $8 or something. Yeah, I got the backs of them here. It was like, $7.99 for the Japanese Kirby 2. It was $14.99 for the Shadowgate and $39.99 for Ninja Turtles 3. That one was pretty expensive, but like I said, don't usually see that one. I also picked up some toys. Yes, ToyRatt, not just for video games. I got Bebop and Rocksteady. These are the original 1988 toys. The Bebop and Rocksteady were $30 each. Remember, that's Canadian. This is a store in Canada. I looked at them on eBay, and they were selling for $30 US, so $30 Canadian doesn't seem terrible. Again, these are the original 1988 versions. They're not even like, 6 years ago or something. I think they brought out all the classic toys, but these are actually, they say 1988 stamped right in the back of them. All the Game Boy games work. I tested all of them in my Game Boy. I cleaned them. 2 of them were really clean, like almost spotless. One of them was a little dirty. So it looked like they maybe cleaned 2 of them and forgot one of them. But they all work. The battery, actually, Kirby 2 and Shadowgate both have battery backup, and they both still have their save games in them, and they still save when I save. So those still work perfectly, surprisingly. But yeah, that was ToyRatt. As always, it's great to check out this store. It's a little out of my way, but in this case, I was actually headed to a Christmas party with my coworkers, and we happened to be going past Milton. So, if you're ever in the area, as Milton, Ontario, definitely worth checking out ToyRatt.